What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Alarm live stream. That's right, another live stream today. And you know what? There's actually going to be a third as well, because at 8 p.m. Eastern, Craig Mish and we're going to break down all the deals that went down with Major League Baseball. But because the MLB trade deadline was so crazy and so nuts today, Jim Bowden and I didn't get a chance to do any kind of DFS talk for our listeners. So we've decided here what we're going to start doing now over at fantasyalarm.com. We're going to start doing a DFS MLB live stream every day, Monday through Friday, here at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. Why 6:05? Because I need a couple of minutes to get myself all ready and beautiful for all you guys after coming off of the show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. So Fantasy Sports never sleeps. You guys have serious DFS questions to ask. Well, John and Pemba did the playbook over at Fantasy Alarm. The pitching coach done by my man here, James Grande. What's up, Jimmy?
Back at it with the white vans for the second time today. Talking some DFS now.
We're definitely talking some DFS now. So I'm more than happy to take any and all questions from anybody. You can hit us up on YouTube, Periscope. You can hit us up on Twitter. You can hit us up on where else did I say? Facebook, YouTube, Periscope. Yeah, right there. You can ask us any and all questions that you want. We know that we've got the DFS chat going over in the on the website as well. So bring your asses over here to the live stream and get the answers to all your questions in real time from James Grande. In the meantime, while we wait for those questions to start piling in, well, James, let's talk about pitching today. You did the pitching coach over at Fantasy Alarm. So who you liking today? Who's your best option? Are we paying up for chalk? Are we digging deep in our pockets?
So at the top of the list, there's two names. There's two names I have in mind here. It's Trevor Bauer and Charlie Morton. And, now Masahiro Tanaka with the news that Jonathan Scope is gone. So the Orioles really have literally nobody to use, maybe nobody to swing the bat. So I think I would rank them Bauer, Morton, Tanaka, close between all three. Bauer is showing this year that he is the guy we thought out of UCLA. Last start, he had 10 Ks. He's already dominated the Twins once this year, 11 strikeouts over 5 2/3 innings. And now the Twins also lost Brian Dozier, so their lineup is hurting. So I think Bauer up at the top is the guy, followed by Morton and Tanaka. Middle tier, I really like John Gray today. John Gray.
Oh, come on, really? Why?
I mean, so he's been. I get it, and the peripheral stats seem to always be in his favor. Other than he has a 5.16 ERA, but his peripheral stats are great. His 3 out of his last 4 starts, he's gone at least 7 innings. He's allowed 1 run in those 3 starts and has struck out 6 or more in all 3, including a 12 strikeout game versus the Marlins. 2 of those starts were against the Astros and the Mariners. Both are currently in the playoffs or in playoff contention. So I think there's something to be said about that. And he's pitching in St. Louis, so we have a massive park upgrade, to say the least. And the Cardinals, we talked about them earlier this morning, traded Tommy Pham. So they're a little, Jose Martinez banged up. They're a little thin at the plate. So I like Grape, specifically on FanDuel, though. He's 9.6K on DraftKings. He's the 8th priced pitcher on FanDuel at just 8.3K. So I think that's maybe like price per dollar, the best play of the slate at pitching. Just he's so cheap. Down below, Roark, Godley, and even Colby Allard are 3 guys that I have interest in. Roark gets the Mets, and I mean, the Mets are the Mets. They're not very good. They've been near the bottom half of the league since in July and versus right-handed pitching. And Zach Godley is, I don't understand the pricing. I know he hasn't been great, but 7.2K on DraftKings is just too cheap. The Rangers lead baseball since July 1st in strikeout percentage. And Godley's someone that we've seen, although he throws a lot of pitches and doesn't amass a lot of innings, I think Godley is someone that we can really trust in almost all formats, and someone who I'm projecting maybe like 6+ strikeouts here with ease, So I think Godley, and then Colby Allard, is obviously risky because that Atlanta game is the one really bad weather spot, and it's going to be super scary. That might not hold on. I mean, we see that every night with Atlanta, that there's thunderstorms, rain, but tonight seems worse than normal. So if you have money to blow, so to speak, and you want to take a shot on Allard and GPP, I'm fine with that as well.
Okay. Interesting options there all around. Yeah, the weather in Atlanta has definitely been a lot on the strange side here. So I'm looking at the pitching coach right now, and okay, in a deep GPP, yeah. You really think Allard's got that kind of strikeout upside here? I don't know what the Marlins strikeout rate is at this point right now, but I don't know. They are dumping everybody off, so
I don't think Allard is someone who necessarily has strikeout upside. It's like he only has like a 7K per nine at AAA this year. But the thing is, like, if you're targeting him on a site like FanDuel, you don't lose points for base hits. So where he lacks in strikeouts, he's not going to lose in like he would on DraftKings, where every hit or every walk or every negative impact is negative points. So I think Allard could be interesting. But again, if you don't like the weather, just stay away. You absolutely do not need to go there. Zach Godley is cheap enough. James Shield is cheap enough to get by with as an SP2 on DraftKings, or even as a really deep GPP play on FanDuel.
Yeah, I saw that Mpemba put James Shields into the playbook there. It's so hard for me to trust him. It really is. Now, I know that he's been eating innings and doing a decent job there. So, also if you're talking about against the Royals, who surprisingly didn't do a whole lot of moving and shaking here at the trade deadline either. I know they traded Moustakas. Was wondering if Merrifield was going to be a guy who was going to go. I did see that they just put Brian Goodwin on the DL. So maybe this does work out in James Shields' to his advantage here. He also suggests Danny Duffy on the opposite side of that game. What do you think about that? We heard rumors that maybe Jose Abreu was going to get traded. He has not been. So Duffy moving up against the White Sox. Are you in favor of that move, or you think like Mpemba maybe got kicked by a mule yesterday? Not thinking clearly. I don't really know.
You mentioned Abreu, and he's one of my favorite targets at first base, actually. He has him and Duffy's history runs deep, 50 at-bats, and Abreu has 16 hits and 2 home runs. If you go up and down the White Sox lineup, Tim Anderson, 345 against Duffy. Leury Garcia hitting second, 332. The first 5 batters in the White Sox lineup all have double-digit at-bats and are all hitting 300 or better against Duffy. So, that scares me a little bit. And I'm not saying the White Sox are a very potent offense, but, when you start talking about BVP, you would like to see double-digit at-bats before you really, take it with any grain of salt. And we have. All 8 out of the 9 batters on the White Sox have seen double-digit at-bats against Duffy. So GPPs, are you could play anybody. You could hit for, he could strike out 20 for all we know. It's random sometimes, but it's just the numbers support the White Sox offense more than they support Duffy here.
Okay, listen, I could definitely get behind that. Let's talk about on the offensive front now. Specific pitchers you want to target against here today?
Homer Bailey. I'm not trying to cut you, but Homer Bailey is that. I can't believe he's still in professional baseball. To be frank, and I mean, he actually, for whatever reason, he looked good against the Cardinals. Maybe, and that's probably why maybe Tommy Pham was traded, and they're calling it quits, because if you don't look good against Homer Bailey, it's, it could be a long second half of the year. But I mean, he hasn't looked good. He's had like 3 games in his career, 2 no-hitters, and other than that, I mean, he's been injured or piss poor. So I mean, I think Bailey is the guy, the top guy you want to target on today's slate.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because it always seems to happen that when I stack against Homer Bailey, like all of a sudden it's like the spirit of Cy Young's like, whoa, and the guy's like an amazing pitcher, and it drives me absolutely insane here. I don't like the Detroit line. I mean, obviously with powerhouse Leonis Martin no longer in Detroit, it gives me a little bit of concern here, but. I mean, I guess the price point on these Tigers will at least allow you, some decent arms to get in there against him. Who else are you looking to stacking up against in this one here? Maybe looking at, wow, they're really, I mean, could we get away with like Dodgers against Wade Miley? Like, I feel like maybe that's an interesting place to go, but they're really, I mean, is there anybody else that you're like, you got to stack against this guy?
I mean, the Yankees have the top implied run total of the slate. Yefry Ramirez, he's been decent in the bullpen. He has a very strong 9 K per 9, but we haven't necessarily seen a big sample of him as a starter. I mean, he hasn't gone over 5 innings. Last time out, he allowed 3 home runs. Now, the one thing you don't do versus the Yankees in Yankee Stadium is allow home runs, or it's going to be a long outing. So I think the upside for Ramirez, is there because of the strikeout stuff, and the Yankees do strike out a lot. But there's also the flip side where, Stanton, Gregorius, Hicks, 2, 3, 4 could all potentially hit home runs back to back to back. And, especially at Yankee Stadium, a pop-up can turn into a home run just like that. So I think Ramirez is sneaky. I like your Wade Miley stack. Kiki Hernandez is always someone who's, notorious for lefty mashing. Chris Taylor, I do like the Dodgers. I think Drew Pomeranz, could be someone that we look to stack against too. I mean, Rhys Hoskins is hotter than maybe anyone in baseball right now. We saw from last year that when this guy gets hot,
time out, dude. Really, that's the metaphor or simile that you're gonna give me. Hotter than what? Hotter than what? Like a chicken McNugget on a sidewalk in Rio? Like that kind of hot? Like give me something powerful. Give me something that's gonna move me here.
You got the chicken. I can't follow up the chicken nugget on a sidewalk. That's Howard. That's good.
That's not even me. Like you know what? And I'm gonna hate to say this, but I actually heard that used on a Nesson broadcast of a Red Sox game. And the announcer actually said that. It was like, I know, right? Screw you, Impemba. But yeah, it was like hotter than a chicken McNugget on a sidewalk in Rio. And there was like just dead air after he said it because nobody really knew what he meant there. But I would come on. All right, so that's going to be your homework assignment here, James. All right, is that you need to start working on your metaphors and your similes. I want something outlandish. I want something crazy, something nutso in there. Not Rhys Hoskins is just hotter than, well, anybody who's playing right now.
All right, that's next live stream. Or I'll just start tweeting them at you. Either one, whichever comes first.
I'm gonna hold you to it. All right. Couple of questions here from the DFS chat room right now because we're surprising everybody with this DFS live stream. I don't want to leave these guys hanging in the DFS chat. So I'm going to use that chat to throw a couple of questions here also to use. Number one here, best cash pitchers for DK, in your opinion. NASCAR 12 wants to know, is it Godley and Tanaka?
I I mean, with Tanaka, with Jonathan Scope getting traded, I think Tanaka vaults into that category with Bauer and Morton. He has the best matchup, obviously, because Morton gets Seattle, but in Seattle, so that that's a nice pitching upgrade, and Bauer gets the Twins. But I think Bauer slightly over Tanaka, but Tanaka's $3,000 cheaper. So if you need the cash, obviously go Tanaka. And I think Golly is leaps and bounds the top mid to value tier pitcher on this slate. No question about it.
Okay. All right. I can get behind that. And then Charlie Bob 10 wants to know, is Caleb Cowart for 2,000 on FanDuel batting 7th okay for a FanDuel cash lineup if you wanted to have like a throwaway spot?
I mean, I don't know. It's not something I would do. Usually if we're punting, we want someone higher in the lineup. He was hitting 290 in AAA, near 290, but I don't know if there's like upside to this play. I mean, eight at bats this year, 125 average. I wouldn't do it, but GPPs, he's okay.
All right, so in a GPP, maybe. In a GPP, maybe Cowart. But yeah, like, I mean, there are some people who will sit there and they'll do that, and they'll just throw away at one spot,
right?
Throw a min-price guy up there just so that they can get in, whether it's bigger bats or a bigger arm there. So, I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I don't love it, but again, I don't really hate it all that much either. Caleb Cowart's one of those kids who, we've kind of been waiting on him. I think one of the biggest problems for Cowart, just at least as a, just as a player in general, is that he deals with Scioscia, and Scioscia definitely favors his veterans. He doesn't like bringing up the young kids. So, I mean, it's definitely a tough call there. I mean, if you're just throwing away the spot, I think there might be another dart or two you could use, but overall, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Not the worst thing in the world. Maybe it is. Who knows? Who knows? All right, so we've talked about pitchers we want to stack against. Let's talk about a couple of hitters who you really like, whether Johnny's got them in the playbook or not. I love Johnny's playbook here. There are lots of options from which to choose, but let's go, Grande. Grande, give me your top 3 hitters for the night. And I'll tell you what, give me your top tier hitter, your top mid-priced hitter, and your top min-priced hitter, or best value, should I say.
So I already started to say his name, and I think Rhys Hoskins is my guy today. He's actually been better versus righties, but Pomerantz is having control issues. When he's pitched and when he's been actually throwing in the zone, he's getting rocked. I think Hoskins is the guy. 7 home runs in his last 10 games, 953 slug. He has 12 extra base hits just over his last 10 games. He's my guy. And you save a couple $100 off of Trout and off of JD Martinez by going Rhys Hoskins. I love Greg Bird and Jose Abreu, who we also mentioned in the middle tier. Bird hitting 333 since the All-Star break. And I mentioned Jeffrey Ramirez. As much as he struck out people so far, he's allowed 3 home runs his last start. I think Bird is a home run threat tonight. I'm not gonna call my shot, but I think it's a very strong possibility. And someone I like in the value tier is David Freese. I think Freese, he's been playing primarily versus lefties. On DraftKings, you could play him at first or third, and I think that speaks to that. That's a lot of value. Like, that gives you more value than normal. But Freese has been playing against lefties. Excuse me. And John Lester has struggled at times this year. And the Pirates' offense is rolling. They've been one of the best offenses in baseball this month of July. And Freese, over his last 10 games, 1,087 OPS, 346 average, 10 ribbies. So he's producing, and he's hitting 4th tonight So I love Freese. I love the Pittsburgh value in general. Jose Osuna as well. I think Pittsburgh is a sneaky stack tonight. I think they've kind of been overlooked for the entire month, and now they go out and get Chris Archer. I think that they're positioning themselves nicely. Jordan Luplow, another Pittsburgh Pirate, leading off. I know he's not great, but he did steal a base in his last game, some upside. So I think the Pirates provide a ton of value tonight. I think that trio I just mentioned really allows us to do a lot of things with our rest of our builds.
Oh, listen, I love it. And anytime Greg Bird gets a mention on a positive front there, you know that's always a good thing. I mean, it's just killing me how I tried hanging my hat on this dude all year, and he has just been such a disappointment overall. So yeah, it's definitely nice to look at that. All right, so that's your top price, top mid tier, top value play here. Give me some other hitters that people should know about that they haven't really checked in on too much.
So Anthony Rizzo is probably my top first baseman. He's right there with Goldschmidt because Goldschmidt gets Cologne, and Cologne could be the guy we see go out and throw 7 shutout innings, and then he can come out and give up 6 runs and 6 solo shots. So Goldschmidt's in play, but Anthony Rizzo against Jameson Taillon this year, or against in his career, 8 for 13 with 2 home runs and a 667 WOBA, and he's kind of been a different guy since Joe Madden did a Joe Madden thing and inserted him into the leadoff position. He's destroying baseballs, 385 over his last 10. So I think Anthony Rizzo is in a great spot tonight. A sneaky catcher tonight, I guess not necessarily sneaky, but catcher's a very hard position to navigate, especially when you're not punting. I mean, there are not many hitting catchers these days. Tucker Barnhart versus Matt Boyd. Barnhart is way better from the right side of the plate. 339 on the year versus lefties. So I think Barnhart is in a really, really nice spot against Matt Boyd. And, Matt Boyd way better this year, but still struggles against righties. And we mentioned him earlier when we were talking about the Reds in our season-long trade deadline special. Eugenio Suarez against a left-handed pitcher. I said it earlier. He's been one of the best players in baseball against lefties, and he gets Matt Boyd. A mini stack of the Reds, Barnhart and Suarez could be a really intriguing play. Suarez is viable in any format you want. I mean, he destroys lefties. I can't stress that enough. Moving on, some outfielders I really like. If you're not into the Rays, Ryan Stanek and their bullpen, Cole Calhoun has been on fire, leading off 981 OPS over his last 10 games. I think Cole Calhoun is a really sneaky play. He was like top 5 players in July in home runs, Cole Calhoun. So I think Calhoun is a really nice price tag across the board. Adam Jones against Tanaka. If you're not into Tanaka, Jones is probably the one guy I'd play. He has a very good history against Tanaka, hitting over 300. I think he is a sneaky GPP play if you want to just do a one-off, because I would never, ever in a million years suggest a Baltimore stack with who they have on their team now. Man. I mean, I know. I'm sure it's super disappointing for everyone not to play some Baltimore guys, but Adam Jones would be the lone wolf, so to speak. And I think like one more really interesting outfielder, Steven Souza Jr., really, really coming on strong. He hit a home run yesterday. He has a 4-game hitting streak. I know he's not the greatest, but 333 over his last 10 games, Howard. I mean, 915 OPS, and he has Goldschmidt and Pollock hitting in front of him. There's run-producing opportunities. And from what we saw last year, if you dive into his numbers, he was very, very reverse split guy. He hit righties. He couldn't hit lefties for shit, so to speak. And he gets Cologne tonight. And we mentioned Cologne is someone who could be good, and he could give up a lot of home runs. So I really like Steven Souza as well.
All right. I mean, yeah. Here's the problem: is like the seasonal fantasy guy in me is like eking his way out when he hears names like Steven Souza. Let me ask you here: when you talk about a guy like Adam Jones, his name was bandied about in trade rumors throughout the last few weeks, and he's been very adamant. He's a 10-5 player, which means that he's got the right to refuse any of the deals. And there were a couple of deals that he was like immediately he just kind of nixed this. Now that the trade deadline is passed, do you think this helps open him up a little bit more? Is this why you'll be willing to go with him as the lone wolf in a GPP lineup here because you just think that he's got the ability, or is this just straight up BVP numbers versus Tanaka?
Well, it's BVP, but if you look at his like recent stretch of games, his last 10 games, amidst all the trade talk and all that he's going here, he's going there, he's hit 385. So just yesterday, 3 hits, when obviously the deadline is tomorrow, thinking, oh man, maybe I get traded. I'd have to waive but he's still hitting 3 hits yesterday, 385 over his last 10 games, 15 hits in 10 games. So it's not just, yes, he's been good versus Tanaka, but he has been heating up. And it's interesting to note that this has been without Manny Machado hitting in front of him or behind him, giving him that protection. He's been better without Machado. So, I mean, I think Jones is going to be essentially unowned. And it's another positive to playing him in a GPP because let's say he does go out, hit a home run at under 10% owned, that you have an advantage on the rest of the field.
All right. Right on. Well, I'm looking through. I don't see any other questions here. I know everybody's kind of gleaning a lot of the knowledge that you're throwing down here, James. And I appreciate it very much. Again, this is going to be a new feature for us guys, so definitely check it out. John Impemba, who's producing today, will also be on screen with us a number of times. Again, the live stream is going to be from 6:05 to, roughly 6:30, 6:35, to at least that we can answer all the questions that you guys might have as far as your lineups go, but we also want to give you that last half hour to really solidify your lineups. And if you have any other last-minute questions, again, hit the chat room over at fantasyalarm.com. You definitely want to make sure all the guys are answering, and Pemba's answering questions right now as we speak. Grande does the same thing. I'll pop in there as well, along with Dan Malin, Dom Murtha, Justin Vreeland, the whole rest of the gang over here at fantasyalarm.com. So, again, the live stream every Monday through Friday from 6:05 to 6:35, we'll be here to answer all your questions, kind of throw out some of our favorite plays. And then again, we got a little bonus live stream tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be here with Craig Mish. We're going to break down a lot of the fallout from the MLB trade deadline and what that means for fantasy owners. James, thank you very much for joining us here at such the last minute. Big appreciation for that. Big appreciation for the work that John and Pemba's doing here, helping me out. Guys, video and live stream, baby. That's what's happening at Fantasy Alarm. Going to be lots of it coming up soon, especially once we get into football season here. Oh, baby, this is going to be good. For James Grande, I'm Howard Bender. This has been the Fantasy Alarm live stream. We'll catch you guys tomorrow.
Later, guys.